This is the New York City FC Pregame Live. Today, New York City look for their first win of the season as they host the Portland Timbers from Yankee Stadium. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
New York City. I'm Glenn Crooks. There's Matty Lawrence. And, Matty, when you're out in the Pacific Northwest, I always think of coffee. You know how much I like coffee,
yes,
right?
I do.
And I know you don't drink coffee. But I do remember telling a server in Portland, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee. And I said to her, I can't really tell you how many coffees in my life that I've had, but this is one of the best. And it's true out there, And speaking of coffee mugs, before we get into all this, I want to show you something here, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
Hold on. Let's get us now I'm going to get us on.
Seems we were born ready here, Glenn.
Huh?
We were born ready here.
All right. Well, I'm just going to do this.
There we go.
So here's this. I host this show, the Coaching Academy, on Sirius XMFC. I talk to coaches every week. It's really, I feel privileged. I get to get all this information about coaching the game, player development, things like that. Well, this mug right here, this actual mug, was in the hands of Nick Cushing this morning at his house. He does drink coffee, and I told him, you need to take a sip of your coffee out of this mug this morning, drink the whole thing down. And I'm not a particularly superstitious guy, but if they get 3 points today, and he indeed took his coffee out of the Coaching Academy mug, then I think he's just going to have to keep on using it.
Well, I do know he'll be taking it on the road. That's what he'll be doing. He'll be carrying it on the road. That's for certain. That's the one thing.
Maybe in his sack,
exactly.
Wherever he goes. It'll be. Well, Nick Cushing was part of that team that beat Portland in 2021 for the title, an assistant to Ronnie Dyla, now the head coach. Gio Savarese was the head coach of Portland at the time. He ended up getting sacked last year. Really, when you look at the full scope of what he did at Portland, it was really positive, got him to a final. But things can break down at times. And then a former New York City assistant, Miles Joseph, took over on an interim basis. Then he was not offered the job, which I'm sure was disappointing. And then, but he's one of the good guys of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was going to work for Phil Neville, who was named head coach and is the coach today for Portland when they go up against New York City. Last time he went up against New York City, he was the Inter Miami coach, but he got sacked last year from Miami. But anyway, so Miles was with him, but then was offered the position of associate head coach at Charlotte with Dean Smith. So Miles left. Dave Vandenberg, who we saw in the hallway a little bit earlier, a coach I really admire, was a youth national team coach for the U.S., but he was Bruce Arena's assistant from 2019 until Arena got sacked last year. And then Dave Vandenberg and Shalrie Joseph, two of his assistants, they both left. I mean, is soccer really that much of a soap opera?
Yes, it is.
It seems like, I'm my goodness.
It absolutely is. And look, if you're in that manager's hot seat, it's as prickly as a hedgehog down there. It really is. You're up and down as much as you can be. And you talk about Phil Neville. I think it's a big surprise to people who have followed his career that he's ended up at a club like Portland Timbers. It's a big club with a good tradition, as you've said. It's a club that have been very successful in recent years, but not in the last two. The last 2 years, they've conceded too many goals. 53 goals in 2022, 58 goals in 2023. So I don't think it's a surprise that there was a change in that manager's hot seat.
Yeah.
But for me, even though he's a a fellow compatriot. He's a fellow English guy. I was surprised with the trouble he had at Inter Miami, given the expenditure and budget he had, and bearing in mind what he did with the England women's team as well, at the back end as well. He wasn't massively successful. It's been a surprise to see him here. But look, you can only judge as you find. And so far, Portland, he's done a good job. Small sample size, we're only 2 games in.
2 games in. 2 games in, 4 points. But Phil Neville himself, now with Inter Miami, he has coached here at Yankee Stadium and has never won a match, even though Portland has won all 3, all by identical 1-0 counts, by the way, here at Yankee Stadium. Phil Neville has not, but that was presented to him earlier in the week.
I've not won on the baseball stadium yet, so that's it's a tough place to go. There's not many teams win when they go to the Yankee Stadium. They're very familiar with the pitch there, and they're a quality team, an outstanding coach, I've got to say. Even though they've lost the first 2 games, the two games that are really tough to play against away from home. So
you mentioned Nick, you're someone that has extensive experience in the women's game. Obviously, you're coach of the Lionesses from 18 to 21. He was with Man City Women from 13 to 20. Coached a lot of the same players, Nikita Paris, Kira Walsh. Kind of what was his impact on the women's game over in England? Massive.
He was the first ever manager of Man City women's team, and he was the one that laid the foundations for their success. I've known him. He coached my son at under 11s at Man City, so I've known him for a long time. He's a brilliant coach, and the work that he did with the women's team at Man City. You speak to all the players that played for England and for the Lionesses, they will say that he's one of the best coaches that they've ever worked with. So it'd be good to see him again. I'm sure we'll have a drink after the game, and we speak frequently because we're two coaches that got to know each other really well when I was the women's manager. So looking forward to seeing him.
What will be the drink of choice?
Knowing Nick, he'll probably want a Budweiser or something coming from England. And I'll just have a cup of tea.
So I shared that with Nick Cushing, and they are close because Nick also coached Harvey Neville as an 11-year-old at the Manchester City Academy. So they go way back. But Nick said, to be fair, we've never had a drink. As much as we are friends, we've never gone out and had a drink together. So there's no way he would know if I wanted a Budweiser. And Nick, Budweiser, not a sponsor, I don't believe, here for New York City FC. But he said there's no way I'd have a Budweiser, is basically what Nick Cushing said. But there's... It started, though, with Phil Neville and Yankee Stadium,
yes.
And there was a little thing about Yankee Stadium today. Now, as you look at the picture here, and let's see if I can make this a close-up of just this. There. So if you look at the far goal to the left, so Matty and I tend to try to get down on the field before the game if we can. We can't always, just to see who we might bump into, just kind of walk around, get a feel for it. It's nice being down on the field. There's something about it. But Sal Rosamiglia, who's the match director here and has substituted for Matty on some of the broadcasts here on the New York City FC network.
Slightly lower class of commentator. I will tell him.
Well, one thing, he walked over and said, "Matty, when are you absent so I can get back on the air?" But he was doing something at the penalty spot, and what it turned out is that when the penalty spot was drawn today, or the dot was painted, it was 1 foot to the right of where it should have been. And we came onto the field and stood behind it. And it was kind of remarkable that it was so far off center. So they endeavored on putting green paint over it and making a new mark. And I think that's what that, the act of getting the new stadium, which still won't be ready until 2027, but to have your own stadium, a soccer-specific stadium with your own people drawing the lines, I mean, it really was, it was kind of a remarkable experience to see how far off center the penalty spot was. And the Portland goalkeeper coach came out and noticed it, and that's when it started. So, you bring it up. I bring it up because of the importance of having your own facility, and that's what New York City has to go through sometimes.
Well, and your own people, and the minute you've got those lines marked out, they're there almost forevermore. You need to repaint to a certain degree to brighten the white line, of course, but they're drawn out, and of course you've got this perspective in a soccer-specific stadium of the stands running parallel to the lines, whether it's the touch line or the byline. It's blatantly obvious. Look, for a grounds crew who are used to a baseball stadium and baseball lines, there aren't really many lines to draw, are there, when it's a baseball game? So you understand why it's difficult. But yes, we are joking about it, but it was so blatantly obvious. It was pretty untrue, that's for certain. But it is true, and it has been fixed, and that's all we can say. It's like a little VAR for the grounds crew. At least the correct decision has been come to.
The correct decision has been made.
It was a clear and obvious error, that's for certain.
As we look out, the actual spot where it needs to be has yet to have been painted. Yeah, so that'll happen after the warm up. As you can see,
we hope
where will the player put the ball? But you can tell we've got the teams out for warm ups right now. So as we talk about the soccer specific stadium, a fairly major announcement during the course of the week is they're going to present different things as it unfolds through 2027. But the entrance, which they call the Cube, they presented that. So there's new renderings, and it looks like a pretty cool entrance and project where you come in and it'll be kind of a light show and highlights and really something that's unique to this soccer stadium. But in addition, we got to sit down with Brad Sims. Brad, he made the rounds with the other podcasts as well. Roberto and I sat with him on our NYC FC Views podcast. And one of the things I wanted to ask him, so Brad plus at least 20 others were on this trip to St. Louis, and we'll get to that game in a moment. New York City losing 2-0 at City Park. Now, the reason so many were there observing is because it's the same architect for City Park that will be constructing, or at least in part constructing, the stadium in Queens. So here's Brad Sims in regard to that. Just wondering, what do you learn from an experience like that?
Actually, what ends up happening in reality is, and we've been to every stadium, since I've been here, for the last 5+ years, visited every single stadium in the league. And actually, you don't get that much of like, here's the great things that you should do and copy. It's more of like, don't do this, or make sure you do this differently. And so and by the way,
that's
valuable. It's super valuable information. So
trial and error.
Most of our conversations, we had like a 3-hour plus tour with St. Louis and went with the folks at St. Louis that were very gracious with their time and took us every single nook and cranny of the entire facility. And we got like 2 or 3 things of like, this was a home run, we loved it, and do this exactly. And we got like 17 things of like, do this differently, or this is what we learned and we would do this differently. And
can you tell us one thing there? What was one thing that you looked at and you said, man, we probably should do it this way instead? Can you recall anything?
I will say, like, we're at the stage, we're so deep in the design, there's not much changes that we can make now. So, we are very, very close. We're within weeks of being full pencils down and going into construction documents just based on the timeline of the overall project. So
that's pretty good.
So this was almost like last minute, get it in under the wire, tell us anything that if we have to really change.
Now I should follow that up though. That 140-page report has been constructed based on that visit, and in fact, that picture I took a picture of Matty in the radio press box in our radio booth, which had pillars and the window frames.
There were the windows.
So it was not a particularly favorable setup to do a radio broadcast. And that I'd like you to know, Matty, that has been included. Your picture has been included because Matty had to point at a couple of things that we were trying to
my picture has been included in many publications, Glenn.
That's right.
So it's just one of many.
And the first thing they're going to say is, he dresses like that for the radio broadcast.
That's a fair and valid point.
Mark Frotto doing double duty, the PA and handing out lineups. Very nice, Mark. Thank you. Lineups, we probably should get to that.
Yes,
just one change for New York City. James Sands will miss today. Suspension, red carded in the St. Louis game, the 2-0 result. And it's going to be Andres Jason coming in. So we would expect Jason on the right. Hannes Wolf will move into the middle. So just one change. Bacrar up top, Sandy Rodriguez on the left. That's your front four with Andres Perea and Keaton Parks sitting in behind. Same back four, freezing goal.
Yeah, look, I think the one thing that Andres Jason brings is hard work and battling qualities. And I think at a time like now, when you need to start really knuckling down, and obviously you need to win games of football, but first I always say you need to outfight, you need to outbattle your opponents. And I think at times it's been slightly, maybe lackluster's not the word, but we've been outcompeted as a team, NYCFC. And Andres Jason brings a little bit of drive and a little bit of physicality. I know he's not particularly big in stature, but we know how many times he gets fouled. We know that he doesn't mind a tackle. I would compare him, not exactly the same as Andres Perea, but they're both combative. I want those people in my team right now when we're not playing well. And first and foremost, can we at least outrun and outwork the opposition? Then let the talented players maybe come to the fore. Not that Andres Jason isn't, but I just think that he offers more in terms of effort and endeavour than some of the other wide players do. And I think that's been evident this season.
A lot of pace on the bench now. Ojeda, he's ready to go. Malachi Jones set to make his debut, possibly. You also see Mihajlovic. So there are some, and that's not including Tyler Magno, who is out. He will not be on the bench, out with a left knee injury.
I just saw Tyler. He was just up in the
was he getting some food?
Up in the media food room. He looked perfectly content as he was tucking into his food. Yeah, he looked all right. Well, but then you wouldn't be able to see his injury as he was sitting down and eating.
But the food here at Yankee Stadium is exceptional. So we should keep that in mind too. All right, so let's look at the reality of the first two games. No points and no goals scored. All right. So, Nick Cushy, I'm going to present this now, part of my pregame chat with Nick, and that's coming up at 1:45 on the New York City FC Network, nycfc.com/radio, and it's exclusive. It's and I think it's safe to say it just happens that, when you get 10 or 12 or 15 minutes with someone, they're bound to say something that, you really haven't heard throughout the week. And I thought this was interesting when he described we're 0-2 with no goals scored. Portland 4 points through their first two games, and he was suggesting this is not quite what it looks like, perhaps.
Well, I think that the debate of whether we're in crisis and they're in a great place is a really interesting debate, because everybody wants points and everyone wants goals, and that is what pushes you up the league. But when you analyse Portland's both games, they won one that they have really low expected goals, and everything they hit flew in the goal. And Colorado will probably feel a little bit hard done by in the first half because the game was even. That gets them the win. Then they have a second home opener, which is against DC, that I'm sure if DC play that game 10 times again, they'll win it 10 times. Their expected goals was 3, and Maxime Crépeau makes 6 great saves. Yeah. And I'm sure if you were to sit with Phil, he'd probably say that he didn't play so well and he wasn't so pleased. But because they have 4 points, everyone perceives that they're in such a better place than we are. Now, we have to analyse our performance. We definitely need points. Points get position. But in game 2, ultimately where we are is 1 point behind where we were in 21 and 22. And we won the championship and got to a final. We're also 1 point behind where we were last year when we didn't make playoffs.
Nick Cushing talking about how the first two games have gone comparatively to Portland. And indeed, their expected goals, and I know we don't always tackle this, but they beat Colorado 4-1 in their opener. Their expected goals was 0.54.
Yep.
That's crazy.
They had 3 shots on target and scored 4 goals, if you can believe that. Obviously, one of them being the Sam Vine's own goal.
Right.
They had 3 shots on goal in that game and scored 4 games. They had 2 shots on goal against DC United and scored 2 goals. So he's absolutely right and factual about Portland Timbers, and maybe we can say they've got a little bit lucky. They've also got a bit lucky because they had 2 games at home to open off with, and NYCFC had 2 games away. But what you can't paper over is the fact that NYCFC in 180 minutes of football only had 3 shots on target and not a single goal. So yes, while Portland Timbers have been a little bit lucky, also the old adage is you make your own luck in this game. And the fact is they've got 4 points and NYCFC don't have a goal or a point. But he's right. NYCFC have been unlucky in going on the road in 2 games and Portland have been at home. So now what you have to do to redress the balance is you have to win your home game. And now you've got 3 points, and Portland have only got 4 out of your three games. So it looks a lot more comparable and a lot easier and a lot better start for NYCFC. They've put so much pressure on themselves, NYCFC, by losing the 2 away games. Now you have to win at home, and it has to start today.
I wanted to. You'll love this because I'm not sure if you're aware of it. So Portland could easily be 6 points through 2 games, except for this. So Christian Paredes, who's in there 11 today, put his arm on a free kick. You know how the defenders, the back line in particular, they put their arm up claiming offside. And sometimes you'll see, in unison. So he put his arm up to claim offside on a free kick. And look what happened. So we're going to look at it here. So you can't see it clearly there, but this will keep playing and it'll get closer and closer. And, the claim for handball, and boom. So what we're going to see, and we'll see it more clearly here, see that arm raised for offside, and it clattered off his arm, and that's what led to the PK. It was a VAR review, and there you see the referee, no choice, because it did come off his arm.
And also, it's at such an important stage of the game. They're 2-0 up. There's
They're
only
up
20
2-0.
minutes
They're
to
up
go.
2-0. They're up 2-0. So Click converts the penalty, and then the 18-year-old Christian Flesher scores, and it's a 2-2 draw because the arm went up claiming offside. I just thought that was. I'm sorry. I find that amusing. Of course, if I were the coach and it happened against me,
fan, you wouldn't find it too amusing.
I wouldn't quite at all. I think that's going to do it for us. Yes. So you wonder. It's Greg Barkey, the VAR again today. So what? You could tell with the replacement officials, what they're trying to do is put either Mark Geiger, Alan Kelly, or Greg Barkey on as VARs.
As many as they can,
as many as they can to provide support, and because those 3 are veterans of pro referees. We know that Geiger was a former referee of the year, as was Alan Kelly. Greg Barkey has always been in an executive position, but he's in charge. He's like the director of VAR, Greg Barkey. So he better get it right then. He's going to be sitting in the chair today. So we're going to go through all that. We've got Nick Cushing exclusive coming up at 1:45 on the New York City FC Network. Our radio digital broadcast on nycfc.com/radio, on the New York City FC app. And if you happen to be watching this and then you're going to watch the game on Apple, since we're at home for the second straight year, the feature, if you're at home, you could get your hometown commentary. That's English.
That's us.
That's us. And there's a drop down on the app, and then you can listen to us, watch it. They sync it up. You don't even have to work on syncing it up. So they do the work for you. You have to pay for that, of course, but they do the work for you. So New York City playing host to Portland, home opener 2024. Let's see what happens. It's coming up in a few minutes. For Matty Lawrence, I'm Glenn Crooks, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes, hopefully.